said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless.
Hey friends, Dennis Nappy II here, and I'm going to do a follow-up video to the podcast, or the broadcast I put out just the other day talking about psychic fatigue. I'm at it again, trying to get back into it with the process of remote viewing. I'm going to share, I'll call it a success story and a miss. I don't want to use the word failure, even though I completely missed a target yesterday. And then today I hit a target, and I'm feeling pretty good about the results. I'm going to share that and talk about my experience and talk about just how I'm processing some of the exhaustion I've been feeling. Again, not just from psychic work or remote viewing work, but just from life in general. I'm feeling a little bit more better, a little bit better, a little bit more grounded. So I want to share some of that experience with all of you out there. I really try to find my inner voice, as I'm always saying, let your intuition be your guide. And I lost that voice. It was still in there, but there were thousands of other voices coming in saying, do this, try this, do this, try this. And I felt that it was just too noisy for me to even attempt a remote viewing session, because then you get in, you spend an hour, hour and a half doing a session, and then you find out it's a total miss. It's pretty deflating when you're already feeling pretty beat up. So I've just been stepping away from things, trying to get some time alone, and I've been exercising a lot, taking care of mind, body, spirit. I don't want to talk more about this at the end of this conversation, but just in the way that remote viewing has been described by some as a mental martial art. And I take a lot of pride in that statement. And I believe in that statement, that it's a mental martial art and it's a discipline. And you have to know when to push and when to take a step back and breathe. You have your in breath and your out breath. And it was time for me to take a step back. And then I got back into it. And like I said yesterday, a pretty big miss. And I'm going to share some of that session with all of you. But a miss is not a failure. A miss brought with it some lessons learned and allowed me to refocus. Of course, I felt deflated afterwards. Like, man, I spent all that time and I completely missed it. But I just want to talk about that experience, and then how I was able to get back in it today and do, I'd say, okay with it. So let me share yesterday's session. Okay, let's share my target here. The target that I was tasked to look at was Mont Saint Michel, or Michael Michel. I'm not sure how to say it. But here you can see it here. It's a structure with a town surrounding it. There's water all around it. That water, I believe, comes in and out of the target area. So that was the basic target that I was tasked to look at through remote viewing. And I'm going to show you my session now. I did one session on this one. Again, this was just me doing some training. I wasn't working with a tasker or anything. I found it online. You'll see blue streaks throughout here. I have crossed off the target number, the target ID, and that's just in case anybody comes across this online. It doesn't ruin the experience for any of you out there. Okay. I came into this, again, I felt okay, but I wasn't feeling very confident in this target or in my ability to connect with this target because of just where I'm coming off from. But I felt it was time to go in. Figured I'll probably take a loss on this one, but it'll be a good warm up for me to start getting back in the process here. Before I even started as my warm up meditation, I saw a sea of people, a crowd, wave. I saw a dark line, reds and yellows, maroons, and I saw an angled black structure that was dark in the background. That could be the target. It could have been, or it could have been something else, but I had an AOL of like a concert. So this felt like just a crowd of people out there. So going in through my first ideogram, I had movements and motion. Then I had an event and I had life. And I just went through my low-level data, movement. It was lifting, it was lively, it was energetic, it was charged. I had up and I had down. And I heard this sound like, whoa. Not sure what that was. And then I had this brief sketch here. I put it over as an AOL here. This just multi-leveled sketch. And I left it at that. My next ideogram, it was an event or movement. Again, I had an AOL of water. Now, there's certainly water around this structure here. It was complex, spinning, smooth. I heard machine sounds, soft and angular. An AOL of clay, but if you look at this, it's circular here, and I had this distinct ridge going around it. Maybe what we're looking at here, if we look at the structure itself, you have this circular shape, and the wall going around it could have been the ridge that I was perceiving. Absolutely, could have been low-level data describing this target here. And then I cued in on life, female. She seemed pensive, deep in thought. She's walking quietly. I heard shoes on the ground. She was alone. She was unaware. The time of tasking was present time. So there could have been a woman walking through the town. I have no way of ever verifying that. There was movement, upward, soft. It was impacting other things above. So like something was coming up and it was impacting things above it. I felt relaxed as my aesthetic impact. And again, I perceived water, motion, energetics. There's a lot of water around this structure, flowing, floating up and down, cascade. And I think this is where I start to go off target. Dive, I had submarine as an AOL, USS blank, and a buoy. But then I drew this. I drew water, and I drew a structure here, which I, in my mind, and up here as an AOL labeled as a buoy. It was just going left to right. But this, I'd say, is a good visual drawing, a low-level data of the target itself. I described it as cold, dark, wet, surreal. I heard splash and rain, and I felt uncomfortable. And again, but I'm getting back into this AOL now. Life, arms crossed, male, seated, huddled, dirty, and he was swaying. And I'm in my mind, I'm telling a story of like being on a boat, is where my mind was going. To describe the location: barren, wasteland, drop, rounded, curving, descending, cradle, corridor, and alley. And I got this drawing here. This could be a corridor or an alley or an aspect of the target. It could be an aspect of the structure itself. But then I got lost in my AOL, a boat or a ship. So now my mind is starting to tell this story. And this is, I think, a challenge for me that I'm identifying as a remote viewer and also as an author and creative writer. I like to tell a story. So I start seeing elements and my mind starts crafting the story. And I have to remember, stop telling the story, step away from the story. You can tell the story after you've gotten your data, but I have to stick back and just record the data. And that is a challenge for me. And again, I had this structure here. This does look like possibly the tower part of this target. But then I had an AOL, a rocket in Cape Canaveral. And then again, I'm going off in AOL land. You know, this data here I said is more AOL. Canteen, canister, movement, junction, shaking, vibrating, I had the Challenger. So now I'm lost. I'm lost in my AOL. And these are all things describing this rocket or this submarine that I'm expecting, that I'm looking at. Something on an axis, flagship. So the rest of this is mostly, I think, noise. I initially, I'd say, had contact in here, especially as I look back at it now. It's a lot of low-level data. And if I would have stuck more to the structure of remote viewing and gathering my data and separated that story, I think I would have had much better target contact. And actually, as I'm looking at this data now, I'm feeling a lot better that, yes, I was there and then I went off target, as opposed to just I never hit it. I think I did hit the target and then I lost it. But those misses, those sessions that could have been better are hard sometimes. They're hard on the ego. I was very frustrated afterwards. I was very deflated. And then my mind, I start to question myself. Am I even a remote viewer? Am I any good at this? Or is all my other data just because I'm a good storyteller and I'm just making stuff up and happen to get lucky? Like, I had all those self-doubt thoughts. I had to get that under control. And I came back at it again this morning and I attempted another target. But before I did that, I went back and I reviewed all this data, like I just did with all of you here. And I looked at, where did I go off? What elements did I have that looks like I was tapped into the signal line? And where did I veer off? And what should I have done better? I asked those questions. I analyzed myself and I looked at, well, I had this data here. Instead of getting lost in this AOL thread, I should have come back. I should have probed this buoy or this circular shape or this towering structure that looks like a rocket, I should have probed that more and gathered more low-level data about it instead of trying to craft this story that is in my mind. You're lost in an AOL at that point. And that's what I did. So this morning, I tried to come back to just that basic data collection mindset and sticking to the structure of remote viewing. And I'm pleased with my results. So I'm going to share this morning's session. The target itself, again, I blacked out all the target numbers, hopefully. Let me come here. This target was, there we go. This target was Chinese pyramids. If you can all see my screen, this is just a quick quick Google search here of the Chinese pyramids. And oh, holy shit, I'm seeing some more feedback for myself in a lot of areas right now as I'm just looking at this, because I haven't done a ton of feedback on this one yet, but I'll go through that and I'll share that with all of you. So it was Chinese pyramids. So let me show you my data now as I'm looking at this. Okay, so here's my target. Again, I felt okay, but I was nervous and not feeling confident coming into this session. Right away, I was picking up on a life. And let me be clear, the tasking for this target was the construction and purpose of these Chinese pyramids, not just the pyramids themselves. So right away, I picked up on a life, male, expanding, floating, glowing white. Then I got this like ghost-like feeling, transparent, escape, platform is an AOL, an apparition. And I really tried hard to put my AOLs in AOL land and then move back and collect the data as the data was coming to me. And then I had another life, female, tall. I saw the color blue and I saw black hair. I had an AOL of a nightgown and I sketched her really quick, just what I saw, a woman dressed in blue with black curly hair. And then I had an AOL of something holy, expanding, and then I had consciousness and awareness. Now, in my mind, I'm going, all right, this is sounding really esoteric, really woo-woo. Let's move on. Let's do another ideogram. I really didn't want to get into this storyline, especially this early on. Coming back in here, again, movement and energetics. I had a lot of natural energy, slow moving, forward moving. And then it was like bright outside, brown, gritty, rough. That's supposed to be scrapey, like a gritty feeling when you touch something. An AOL of walking. I heard birds chirping. I heard voices. I liked it there. I sensed maybe salty, and the air was chilly. Right away, I had, I think that says, aerial structure. Yeah, I did. I perceived for a moment like a craft in the air. And I just cued on land. I wanted to see what land was out there. And I had this tall, towering shape with a bunch of life forms around it. And I perceived something up in the air. But I felt that wasn't the most important part of the target. So I don't know, that might have just been my imagination. I didn't go too much into that. As an AOL here, I had an Asian feel. So, all right, I'm in the ballpark. Sounds, voices, walking. I heard voices, I heard walking, I had food smells. The structure was tall, rigid, angular, north-facing. I had the word beam and protrusions, like I had protrusions coming out of it. AOLs, market, skyscraper, and mountains. All would be, acceptable AOLs for a pyramid. The life was moving, was wandering. And again, I liked it there. I just cued on what was in the air, trying to explore what's in the sky. I saw a smokestack. It was cool, crisp, dark. I had the sense of smog. I heard coughing sounds, a person coughing, and food coming out of their mouth. I kept seeing Asian people. And I just felt, oh, that's gross. I cued on water. I felt there might have been water in the distance, a sea, it was something fresh, but it wasn't important to the target, so I moved on. I cued on life, economic, ergonomic, escape, function, something about barometric pressure, and emancipated. I did another ideogram here, complicated, confused, dynamic, movement, rush, and energetics. Okay, so then I moved to the optimum position to sketch and describe what I was seeing. And right away, I saw this pyramid structure, and I had these two lines behind it. I don't know if it was a structure behind it or what. I wanted to go off again on my imagination and tell this story. I really tried to stick to the data and just probe different points of this to see what comes up. Clean, crisp, clear, no judgment. I had modern, but then I had an AOL of the Sphinx. And I thought, okay, don't get sucked into an Egypt target and start describing the Great Pyramid. I did not want to do that, but I had to declare the Sphinx and then clear it up out of my mind. I thought there might have been a cascading water element somewhere in the background. And I thought, hey, as an aesthetic impact, this was really pretty. In my mind, I was picturing the Louvre and feeling like maybe this is some kind of modern structure. I moved on to describe it a little bit further. It had a rim. It was shiny. It was gold, angled, beveled, structured. It was designed and it was engineered. Had an AOL of tarot. Don't know what that meant. Again, I had the sensation that aspects of it were hard. An AOL of a walkway or a patio. And the walkway or patio I sensed was surrounding the structure, the pyramid structure itself. But it was empty, barren, and distant. So what's the most important about this target? I wrote the life, the machine, toroidal construction, which speaks to the tasking. There were piers and towers, and I had catacombs. And then I had an AOL, what lies beneath? And again, I saw these towers here, these or pillars is the word I'm looking for. And I saw life or figures in between those pillars. I called that the Hall of Records, a museum, a tour guide, something about exploring. Again, I liked it here. It was interesting. It was cold and damp. Now I'm going to stop sharing that now. And I'm just again, I need to verify this is connected to the Chinese pyramids, but I'm seeing, let me share my other screen here. When I looked at my Google search, okay, the Chinese pyramids at the pole, there are all these, I remember reading about this years ago, all these figurines, these statues that were identified underground in these structures themselves that were buried. So that could be the life forms or those people that I saw in the sketch. I also said the Sphinx, and I'm just seeing this now. Egyptian periods, Lady Liberty, and more debut in East China. I don't know if this is connected or not. This looks like it might be more modern now that I see it, but interesting. As I'm looking at this drawing, maybe I'm giving myself feedback right now. There's exactly kind of like those pillars that I had sketched, but I don't think this is an ancient pyramid right here. It looks like there's a roller coaster behind it and a pyramid and all that stuff. So I don't think that's connected to the target, but it's interesting to note. I'll have to look more into that as I engage with this feedback. But I do think that I was seeing those statues in the place where they were uncovered in the structure itself, because then and then I had this had Star of David, and then I had something like Greco-Roman, and I had this helmet. I moved on to describe the main purpose or function, and I had elope, escape, rub, heat, and friction. I felt off here. Compressing, restricting, tightening. And again, I probed it again. I asked again, what is the main purpose? I had a tour guide, but then I got this tunnel. The road less traveled. It was quiet. It was serene. And I had an AOL of a temple. And it was like there was two inlets here. And I had two life forms walking down. And then I drew another life form here. But actually, as I probed it, I thought it was, if you look down here, a statue on display, armor, old armor. And again, I think that comes back to those statues that we saw that I just referenced. I heard ringing, humming, and gong sounds, but everything was very soft. And then I had a museum and coronation as AOLs here. I perceived pipes and tubing in some kind of structure. What was most interesting to me, AOL of rocket and tower. And then again, I tried to get back to the data and away from the AOL, but I did see this briefly in my mind. It was very fuzzy. And again, an AOL of like a Washington Monument or an obelisk. I had this tall structure here with an opening at the bottom. Can I go in here? And another AOL, St. Louis Arch. I had to just declare it and get rid of it. And I saw almost like two arches coming together. It was an old, destructive. There were definitely ruins. And again, I had an AOL of a pyramid. I had a life around this structure, multiple life forms standing around this structure. Were they singing? Were they chanting? Again, speaking to the purpose of what this was, maybe there was some kind of religious ceremony. There was a platform. It was elevated, farscape. I'm not sure what that means. And again, AOL of Statue of Liberty. And I moved on. But these oceans, an ocean but no waves. I don't know how close they are to water, but that might have been tied into the Statue of Liberty. Happy Easter, Odessa. I'm not sure what that means. Cyrillic, Greek, or Roman writing. These could have been, I saw writing. It could have been Chinese characters that I saw. Tower, function, punctuality, like a clock, daylight, timekeepers, and sometimes ancient pyramid structures did have something to do with time. And here we go. This is, I think, my big moment here. What was the purpose of it? I saw them. I saw these people, men of old, men in white robes. They were chanting like Om. There was a whole procession of them, a quiet procession. They had a white robe and they had a rope tied around their white robes, and they were holding, like you used to see in church, on a chain, a box, and there was smoke coming out of it. It was a really cool visual that I had. Horrible sketch, but a really cool visual. And I heard bells and gongs and movement, and this was some kind of a ritual. But then I thought to myself, this is really cool, but I'm scared I'm in my imagination right now, and I'm not going to explore this any further because I don't want to waste a whole bunch of time and just be off, and then it's going to kill my ego even more. So I wish I would have explored that, because I think this is right where I need it to be in looking at the purpose of this. And I wish I would have done a deep dive on that, but that's okay. I'm still happy with the session, getting back into it, looking at a target like this. I went back and I went to stage 5 and explore the term museum a little bit more. And here we go: archaeological findings, architectural structure. I had European, and then I got a little bit, I'd say more AOL again. Sunieri of the Rosicrucians, if you ever read Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Erected, structural, Masonic, designed, emblems, emblematic. Symbols are symbolic of power and might. There are hidden features within the design, which all could be aspects of a pyramid. And then anything else: the wayward traveler, tubular, structural escape. And then I wrote good luck to myself. So that was it. I ended the session there, and then I checked on my feedback. I'm feeling a little bit better now. I still have my anxiety. I still have a lot to learn with remote viewing, but I'm glad that I listened to my intuition and I took the time off that I needed, and that I then, even though I didn't want to, I worked some of those verifiable practice calibration targets, because I feel that I was off in my own la la land. And a lot of the targets I've worked lately have been the fantastic, the Hellfire group. We do a lot of fun things. I was involved in some crypto viewing projects that have been really cool, but they're not necessarily grounded in everyday reality where I can definitely go back and verify and say, yep, here's the target, here's what I did. So this was good for me to recalibrate and get back on that. In talking about the discipline of remote viewing, and again, I say all the time, but I'm a student. I still consider myself a newbie. I am not a teacher. I'm not an expert. So take all of the things that I share with a grain of salt, other than I'm a student sharing my experience for any of you that are going through this journey as well. And hopefully you can find some common ground, and maybe you can share some insights that will be helpful to me as well. So I always feel it's important for me to stress that as I share my experiences. I read through a thread the other day in one of our Facebook groups about remote viewing, talking about the dangers of remote viewing. And I think it was more geared towards, like, can you encounter something so dark and scary that you're going to bring something back and it's going to screw up your mind and really harm you? And then they talked about people with, mental health conditions, how that, remote viewing could be pretty dangerous for them. And I just want to comment on that because I think it's relevant based on some of the things that I've been experiencing lately. First and foremost, in my experience, I don't think that I can encounter anything that's going to come back with me other than knowledge. There is information in remote viewing that you have access to, and it changes the way you view the world. It changes the way you view yourself. It changes what you think is possible in so many different ways. So we are bringing back information that can then infect your mind. I do suffer from anxiety and depression from time to time, and I can see how a craft like remote viewing could create a lot of stress in your life. Me personally, I have spent well over 2 decades understanding and learning my own mind before I began remote viewing. I have a background as a soldier. and as a police officer, which requires a lot of discipline. It requires me to recognize where my fear is and to compartmentalize it and ground myself back in reality because I have a job to do. I believe that serves me well in this mental martial art of remote viewing. I've also learned to meditate and practice meditation every day. And I explore my mind through other processes beyond remote viewing. I explore my feelings and where they come from and how do I ground myself in them. And do I lose it sometimes? Absolutely. I have hard days, but I've learned to recognize when I'm not in my right mindset, like I shared with all of you the other day, and to get grounded back in reality. So because of the disciplines that I practice, I feel confident that I can address and handle the challenges and the hardships that sometimes come with remote viewing experiences. Again, I don't think that I'm going to encounter some entity that's going to try to possess me and take over my soul and corrupt me. But with any new thing that you're learning, sometimes it shifts your view of the world. And sometimes those shifts can be traumatic. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad, but trauma is created when you encounter something you've never experienced before and have trouble processing or assimilating that. And I've been through that with remote viewing, and I continue to go through that with remote viewing. But I enjoy this journey. I'm in this for those types of lessons. But had I not had all of that training and other discipline, then I think this would be a lot harder for me to separate some of these fantastic things to be able to function in reality. Because it could be hard to function in reality sometimes with some of the information that comes across that you may never be able to verify. So I think it's important to, if you're going to explore this and you do deal with things like anxiety and depression, please have other disciplines that you have perfected for yourself that allow you to get grounded back in reality. And you can recognize when, hey, this is too much for me. I need to step out. And again, I say that based on my experience, reminding you all that I'm a student. But I feel it's important to share that because we're all going through challenging times. And sometimes these types of projects make things a little bit more complicated for us. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. The journey continues. I feel that, I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm going. I'm not out of the woods yet, but I will continue pressing on and sharing what I can, my friends. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Dennis Nappy II here with Sixth Sense Media. Remember to never stop questioning, keep an open mind, and let your intuition be your guide.
Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend, be water, my friend. Water, my friend, my friend. Be water, my friend.